I call the Honourable Member Arsenati Lole-Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am pleased to speak for the first time on behalf of New Zealand First on the Correction Amendment Bill. New Zealand First has and will always put the safety of our community as a priority, as well as supporting law enforcing officers and staff to carry out their roles effectively and efficiently. With the dramatic increase in drug supply, severity of assaults on correction officers and staff in recent years, we acknowledge the need for prevention. The supreme function of the Parliament is to ensure that self-interest and the evils that come with it are contained. It has been said that enforcing rule of law and maintaining public order are inseparable, and they form the bedrock of a civilised society and sound liberal democracy. There are two fundamentals involved in this quote. The first, enforcing the rule of law. In this case, it's the way in which the Department of Corrections implements and interpret the law through the way they operate using their operational manuals. It also applies to the way they deal with prisoners or offenders, both in custody of the prison services and those under the supervision of the community probation services. The second, maintaining public order. This would apply to increasing public safety as well as the safe and humane containment of prisoners. In the case of community service, it would be with the safety and appropriate application of monitoring processes for offenders and staff in order to reduce reoffending through comprehensive and suitable rehabilitation programs. We can have neither without the right and relevant bills and legislation passed within Parliament. It is therefore imperative that this government produces the best possible outcomes to our increasing crime statistics. There is a constant battle with these statistics, and it is time Parliament initiates serious solutions and prevention. Most discussions of bright future, particularly in today's society, relies on the smiley face and giggle as an appropriate response to all difficult questions, particularly those around the safety and security of our community, although education and assets is part of that list as well. This Corrections Amendment Bill is more or less formalised some of what has already been implemented as part of the prison service daily routine. I know this. I spent the last 6 years in the Department of Correction as a regional advisor. You may call it exercising common sense, which unfortunately is something that is not very common in the way the government operates at the moment. But it is important that those corrections staff on the floor ought to be recognised for their ability in applying discretion and good judgment where warranted. It is about time that the Corrections Act is amended in order to address so many loopholes it has for so long. Improvement to the way health services operate at prison sites is long overdue, and yes, this government has finally got something right. Why it took so long, who knows? Perhaps the Minister needs to have a cup of tea with the right stakeholders who know better without inviting the media. Often decisions have been made by those who sit in their ivory towers without any knowledge or awareness of how things work in the real world at the prison services or the prison sites or even the community probation services. The Minister would do well to seek input, especially from those staff who work on the floor, because they know what works and what doesn't. As for the contract management of prisons, I notice in the bill, clause 16, 17, 18, and also from 42 to 45, those amendments should have been introduced before private contractors were engaged for contract management of prisons. It is astounding that this amendment is introduced almost 2 years after the engagement of Circle as a private contractor to manage the Mount Eden Corrections Facility. There is no question that New Zealand First supports some improvement that this bill will make. At the same time, it is also important that suitable training programs for correction officers are also developed in order to facilitate better enforcement. The amendment bill will also do well in providing a clear process for the area of prisoners claiming lost or stolen property. There are many thousands of tax dollars and working hours or worked hours wasted on processing prisoner property claims. Many of these claims are spurious. There should be clear regulation laid down to define liability. Where a prisoner has been issued property, he or she has the care and control of said property. There should be no avenues or recourse if this property is lost, traded, or stolen once issued. A substantive amount of these claims are made when prisoners to deal with each other. This is called trading, and we know that's illegal and difficult to detect. There is a significant number of hours taken up investigating these claims. These hours could be used for the maintenance of safety and security in our prisons. The Corrections Amendment Act 2005 failed to address this, and now we have this amendment that has also failed to address that. I am furthermore baffled that consideration for the reintroduction of Section 33 and 34 of the old penal institution in 1954, which was replaced by the Corrections Act 2004, and then by amendment in June 2005, removed the power of adjudicators and visiting justice to prescribe the loss of remission as a penalty. This section would have given the power to visiting justice or adjudicators of the corrections facility to apply, and if the inmate, or nowadays we call them prisoner and offenders, as we now call them, was under the section found proven of offences such as assault on the prison officers, he or she may have been imposed to certain disciplines named in subsection 3A, which is loss of remission on any sentence. This would have meant that offences by prisoners towards prison officers could be dealt with within the correction system, and a no-nonsense message would have been clearly given to prisoners or offenders. It had worked when it was in place, and I inarguably affirms its importance in this case. I found it interesting to hear Jackie Deans mentioning her view of turning prisoners' life around. That view should reflect in the way they rehabilitate the prisoners or offenders. Unfortunately, this amendment does not take that into account. I question whether this amendment effectively caters for the second highest ethnic group of the prison population, which is the Pacific. The bill does not give any serious consideration for provision of appropriate and suitable rehabilitation programs for Pacific prisoners, despite the introduction and establishment of the Wakafa'aola Pacific Focus Unit at the Spring Hill Corrections Facility. For so long, the Department of Corrections relied on one Pacific criminogenic program, Sa Ilimatangi, which is just a tick in the box because this program only take up to 10 participants at a time, and with its criteria, it's rather restricted to those with violence criminal offence or violence criminal background. Furthermore, the local Pacific community service providers who are keen to be involved with the rehabilitation and reintegration of the Pacific prisoners and offenders are not being effectively engaged to assist with the successful reintegration of Pacific offenders. Yes, Let it be noted that New Zealand First is in support of this amendment bill to go to Select Committee.
I call the honourable member Ian McKelvey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It gives me a bit of great pleasure